Episode 34 with Jason Blaine and special co-host Mr. Brian Edwards. If you want to find out more about Brian, check way back on episode number 3, and it was a great conversation with him there. We both sat and had a phone conversation with Jason. Really enjoyed this one a lot. Jason's a great guy, great singer, great guitar player, and living in Nashville now, original Canadian boy. Sit back, relax, listen to Mr. Jason Blaine. All right, well, we're rolling. We're here with Jason Blaine and my co-host, Mr. Brian Edwards. Nice to have you guys on the podcast. And here we are at the end of March 2020, and we're stuck in this COVID situation, and it's
crazy.
It's pretty scary. What's it like in Nashville now, Jason?
Well, first of all, thank you, Darren, for having me on your podcast, and Brian, it's nice to meet you.
You too.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy situation. You know, we're just doing the best we can. We're in they call it shelter in place here in Tennessee with my family and I, and we're just trying to do what everybody's doing, follow the rules, and make limited trips out to the grocery store when we need to, but just kind of wait for this whole thing to blow over. And I kind of feel like 2020, we need to hit a reset button on 2020.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Do we ever?
Tornadoes here have ravaged the city, and so businesses and people are already hurting from that. And then this whole crazy coronavirus thing, COVID-19 thing, has really messed things up too, and just created a lot of uncertainty. So I think that the cool thing is that a lot of things are popping up. The country music community is rallying together, like it always has, and we're doing live streams. We're popping in, and we're doing a lot of this stuff. We're talking to friends in the industry, and just staying connected and sort of getting through this together.
Yeah, it's pretty important for that, right? The conversation's really important, and it's a small community, and I think you can reach out to a lot of people and just have talks. Like some people just want to talk to other people that are like them, different musicians, different singers, because that's what they're used to doing when they're on the road, is hanging out with other musicians. And you miss that, right? It's nice to be with your family and spending this extra time, but you do miss your road family, your musician family. It's a different set of friends.
Different sense of humor, too.
Yeah.
No kidding.
I always come home with a pocket full of road jokes that my wife doesn't appreciate.
They just don't see the humor in those, do they? No.
Road jokes, road humor stays on the road, I guess.
Yeah, that's the way.
I think that's one of the great things about country music from day one. I mean, the whole community has always been very tight-knit, and I think that's what kind of kept it through a lot of things, such as this and other disasters around the world, and in times of when the economy was rough and everything else. They all kind of seem to stick together, and I think it's a good base for everybody to maybe learn a lot from. Is that this community is very solid, and I think this brings it out more than anything. That's what I'm sensing in the whole thing, anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I think you've definitely seen back in the flood. We were here in 2010 for the big Nashville flood, and people rallied together. I was a part of a song, a part of a great collaboration that Victoria Banks actually spearheaded and wrote this beautiful song, recorded it Ocean Way with Eric Legg, and I was happy to be a part of that. And it was, you always look for the times when music carries us through,
Yeah, it's a big deal when everyone gets together, and it's nice to see the community people getting together in their living room and live streaming, and you get everyone from your next door neighbor up to Garth Brooks. And Garth was the other day, I'm not sure if you saw it, it's great, Garth and Trish, and it was nothing too fancy. They weren't mic'd up and had fancy studio mics or anything, and just sat around and played and told some stories, and man, it was captivating. I just couldn't stop watching it.
I love those two. I've never met either one of them, but my wife met Garth Brooks at the Publix here in Goodlettsville. So that was, I was pretty jealous, but that was the first. I mean, that's kind of I actually saw that stream, the Facebook Live thing that he was doing. and actually commented on it. I don't know if they'll ever see it, but Garth was the first show that I saw in 1993 in Ottawa. I was 13 years old. Wow. I went with a buddy and his parents, and I remember watching Garth on stage singing. I think it was The River. It could have been Unanswered Prayers, one of those two songs. And he was just, by himself in the spotlight with the acoustic guitar. And at one point, the whole arena took over singing the words for him.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly thinking that I want to do that. I don't know what level or how or whatever, but I just thought it was amazing how this man was entertaining, some maybe 20,000 people could have been with a song that he wrote, and everybody was so moved by it, and I was moved by it, and I was already learning his songs by then on guitar, but that just really, I think that was the moment that planted that seed of a dream in my heart that led me to want to write songs, and then just really start dreaming about moving to Nashville one day and settling here and just being a part of this community where everybody seems to come from all over the world to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, it's great. Let's go back. And before actually we're going to go back to your beginning, I've seen you post a little guitar playing riff from Joe Diffie today. And it's hard to believe that we lost Joe Diffie today. I mean, I think we saw that.
Horrible.
Yeah, just a couple of days ago, seeing that he was going into the hospital. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow. And I think for our community, that's the one thing that's going to really hit home for everybody. Hopefully, it makes everybody realize, okay, yes, I do really have to stay at home. I really can't have my friends over. And
I saw that on social media the other day that he had been admitted and that he had it, but it popped up today on the news feed that he had passed away. And I'm not too proud to tell you, I had a little cry. Like I was overwhelmed with it. I just become overwhelmed with emotion. I'm tearing up right now just talking about it because it just didn't. I just didn't expect that. I mean, he was only admitted a couple of days ago, and you think he pulled through. God, 61 years old, But it's these things start hitting really close to home because then I started thinking about it a lot, and I did that little video with the guitar. But it's more than it's. Anytime you lose some of your heroes like that, for me, from that era, I don't know. I feel like there's something deeper happens. You say goodbye a little bit to your youth and your childhood and that time of innocence or something, because those were the guys. Those were the 90s. It was me around the campfire with my dad and uncles and friends that would join in, and we would play Alan Jackson, and we would play Joe Diffie, and we would play Garth Brooks and Brooks and Dunn and Travis Tritt and Vince Gill and all those guys and Steve Warner. And, so that just hit me, man. It just hit me with all the emotions, and a heart goes out to his family and all the fans that definitely loved him.
He was a big star. There's no doubt about it, especially in those days that you're talking about. I mean, everybody, I'm watching the posts now on social media. It's everybody. I mean, every newscast, everything is praising the guy up and down and the songs that he had. When you stop and look at the songs that he had, man, that was a lot of big hits in those days, especially.
Oh yeah, and just a really authentic country singer. I mean, it was just effortless. He didn't even have to try. It was just he just had it, And those songs, like the guitar riff that I was playing today was from Pickup Man, and that was an amazing record. I mean, the musicianship that Brent Mason played that guitar riff, and I actually. I didn't quite nail it on my little video, but I didn't. That wasn't.
It was really good.
It was pretty close, but it wasn't Brent, And those records, I mean, those were just incredible records, and they were just incredible craftsmen of their instrument and of the songs, and in Joe's case of delivering those country songs from Pickup Man to Ships That Don't Come In or things like just or songs like Home, the full range of music. And that's what I've always loved about country music, is it checked all the boxes for me. Like, it's songs about life, and it could be songs for Saturday night, songs for Sunday morning, for faith, for family. It just checked all the boxes,
Yeah, it was sad to see that. And, you see John Prine is struggling now too, and it's scary, but let's move on to something little bit more exciting. Because we can go down this rabbit hole forever because it's a scary unknown. I know we're in constant talks here every day about what's happening with us in our future, and we have our theater here, and we're talking every day of whether we're going to be able to open this summer. And a month ago, you weren't even thinking that, right? You're just, okay, it's getting bad. And Brian and I are actually supposed to have been out on tour right now. I'm still following the tour schedule every day. And it's like, well, today we're supposed to be in Kelowna, or today we're supposed to be flying to Edmonton, it's weird when you just sit back and had all these plans and you have a future, and all of a sudden you don't know what your future is. But I think it's going to be a bit of a reset, right? And it's some of it's going to be good and some of it's going to be really, really bad. But I think in the industry, the music industry, I think, especially performing live, I think part of it was a little bit getting out of hand, where you take a festival date, and the money that's been thrown around on some of these festivals, in these big acts, making millions of dollars per festival, and I think the adjustments are way out of whack from what a lot of these artists should be getting paid. Not that they're not worth it, but I think there's going to be a total readjustment in what people are going to be making over the next few years. So the tours aren't going to probably be as big. It's not going to be 20 trucks on the road. It's going to be like 5 or 10, or it's they're going to scale things down. I think it's going to be a big shift on the whole touring market from the top all the way down. So I'm interested to see how that's going to unfold, for the good or for the better. But I think for whatever bad there's something that always seems like the world needs to reset for some reason. I think these things come through every 100 years or so. It seems like the last one is 100 years ago, and say, okay, guys,
I wish they'd have waited for 25 years.
I know.
Sure. Well,
or 50, but
I've never had to worry about making the millions of dollars per show that somebody else might have made, but I would tell you that I'm definitely thinking about my band guys and my front of house guys and monitor guys and girls out there too. All of our friends in the community. I think that the thing too is that even on as a part of any conversation when we're talking about the music industry, you could be talking about major shows or television or streaming or anything like that. People can only really think about, the top, like Bernie Sanders, 1/10% of the music industry, like really you can only think of the Taylor Swifts and Justin Biebers and Garth Brooks and all these things. That's like represents like 1% of the music industry. Those guys and girls are they're the big earners, but oh my gosh, I mean the amount of people that make a living in this field of music, from lights to sound engineering, front of house, drivers, guitar techs, stage hands, musicians, everybody. I mean, it's a massive industry that counts on, especially summer. But I know you guys are supposed to be on the road now, but summertime that's hay season for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of nervous people out there that they don't have millions and millions of dollars. They're counting on their summer. It carries them through the winter.
Yeah.
Our industry is a lot bigger than people even think. I watch these news stories talk, and I can see where we were the first ones to go down. I don't mean us personally, but our industry and the sporting industry. But we went long before the sporting industry went. We were the first ones to go because it was just, we were, especially in smaller auditoriums, they were petrified. If there was a school board or a city or municipality running them, they were the first ones to pull the plug. And I think that you nailed it right there. I mean, if anybody ever knew the size of this industry, we're going to be the last ones to get back at it full tilt too, because there's going to be this social distancing deal. And do you go into an auditorium now that's at 1,000? Does it now seat 250 people? Because you got to spread them around. You got to. That's what's going through my head with this thing, and I don't know. It's frightening.
Right, and and sometimes people can sort of. I don't know, look down their nose at it, and say, these people need to get real jobs, and it's the dreamers, right? But then your heart breaks when your favorite singer passes away, your favorite actor, is not making, or actress not making movies anymore, we all gather around our television sets how many times a year to watch the Grammys or the Oscars or the CCMAs or the ACMs or CMAs or the Opry, to watch people entertain us, because the music becomes the soundtrack to our lives, and the movies are a mirror of our culture and our image and seasons of time, and so it's the industry is made up of the dreamers.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I was watching Idol came on tonight, and I've been following it a little bit this year. Then I realized, well, the live shows are coming up. So I went online and said, well, there's no way they could have the live shows starting in a couple of weeks. So I just checked online. Of course, it's postponed indefinitely.
Yeah.
And you think of all those kids that just waited for their chance to make it on Idol, and now they've made the top 20, and sorry, it's, what's going to happen there? I mean, there's so many stories and so many tales to tell. And like you said, it is way larger than that percentage of 1%. But
you know what? I will say there's a lot of cool stuff going on, though. I've seen yesterday I participated in something that was kind of spearheaded by a pal of mine, Dan Davidson. It was called Diesel Bird Music Fest, Digital Music Fest, and it was on Instagram Live. And there was some proceeds raised for Unison Benevolent Fund, which is a great organization that folks tuning into the podcast should be aware of. They do really great work. I've supported them, and I'm going to continue to support them any way I can. And they exist to support musicians, singers, and songwriters, people in the music community in times not like this, but like this. I mean, I don't think that anybody's ever experienced anything quite to this scale where they're getting more applications than they've ever had, obviously now, but they've been around to help folks out if they've taken ill or for some reason they can't go and do what they do. And there's not really, you fall into this weird gray area where you haven't been maybe contributing to an unemployment insurance plan through the government thing. So in steps Unison. They recognized this years ago, and those folks just do fantastic work. Thankfully, my family and I, we haven't had to, we haven't fallen on times that hard, but who knows, man? I'm turning 40 next month, so there could be sometime down the road, and I could be, I'd need some help. So what goes around comes around. So you got to support organizations like this.
As a songwriter going through this sort of stuff, how does your songwriting brain kind of work? Do you tend to write more sorrow type stuff, or do you take a complete turn and try to write more positive, happy type stuff that takes people's mind away from all that sort of stuff?
I wish I could tell you I've been writing. I haven't been writing a thing. I've just been kind of in I don't know, family protective mode. I certainly haven't felt like I haven't felt in the writing mode right now. We've been entertaining the kids, playing board games, kind of huddling together. I always kind of go to writing, as a discipline. I mean, I do it pretty faithfully. So I kind of feel like we're on a bit of a pause right now. And I would love to get back to it at some point here.
You're in a different mindset now than normal. It's not
Absolutely.
easy to get into work or your normal stuff. I've been just trying to find things to do around the house that gets my mind off of anything. And even getting into my studio, I've walked in a bunch of times and I think, wow, this is a great time for me to do this. But my mind's not there. Like I feel like I just can't step in here yet. Not that it doesn't feel appropriate. It just, I don't know. I just don't have the mojo for it right now.
That's a good word. I don't have the mojo. I don't know. I feel like I want to do some creating and I might, in the next coming weeks and days but I haven't, I don't know what I'd write. I don't feel like a peppy, I just don't feel like something fun right now. I don't feel like, that's just not the mood I'm in, so I can't force myself into I want whatever I'd be creating to feel authentic. And I also don't feel like going to like a super sad melancholy place either right now.
No.
Yeah.
I think we're all in this lull. Like I just said to Darren, I've been self quarantined for 14 days. I've never been home for 14 days in 40 years, because in this music industry, you're never home. And if you are home, you don't want to stay there anyway. That's what we do, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, your case, you've got
kids.
4 children. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of a difference. But I said to Darren today, I mean, the motivation is zero. I mean, I had a bunch of papers and checks to sign. They're still sitting on the desk in there for 2 weeks. I just don't want to touch them, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah, totally. But, you know, I did the live stream the other night, and that felt great. I hadn't done that before, and there was, I don't actually know, there was hundreds of people on. There might have even been 1,000 people or more on, because people started different watch parties, and there was like 50 different shares and a couple dozen watch parties and stuff. So I'm not sure exactly how many people tuned in, but it was nice to have that connection. I could see that I was reading some of the comments as they were going up, and I was performing, and you don't get the applause, you know.
No.
Yeah.
But at least you feel connected to a group of people, and you can sort of can just connect that way, maybe.
Yeah, it's a neat thing that you can do, and even with Instagram and Facebook, they do it really well. And I know Instagram has upped their game a little bit, and I see a lot of Instagram videos where they're phoning people in and they're coming in and out, and I think, man, that's really slick. You can sit here with your little iPhone and produce something that would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars 15 years ago. 10 years ago.
Yeah. If there's ever a time to be quarantined, I mean, we've got Netflix. We've been watching the Tiger King. If you haven't seen that is some crazy, crazy shit. You got to check that out.
I heard about that today. Someone was telling me they were watching it, and I had no idea what that was, so I have to check it out.
No, maybe by the time this airs or something, people will be hip to it. I've been seeing it's kind of become the quarantine Netflix thing that everybody's been talking about. It's, you know, I've seen a bunch of friends post about it, and that's what got me into it. So my wife and I just binged that thing. That was a trip. That was like watching a train wreck, but you can't look away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've often thought about it, if this would have happened 25 years ago with no internet, no Netflix, no this, no that. I mean, what the heck we would have done? I mean, I remember my first cell phone weighed about 35 pounds back in the early days. And I mean, you wouldn't want to be lugging that. You couldn't go anywhere anyway. So it's thank God for all that stuff, or we'd be totally whacked.
Oh, yeah. And our kids have no idea. Our kids, they have no clue. We literally we started forcing them. This is kind of cool, though. We forced them to play a board game. We took all their electronics until they successfully played a board game together without fighting.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, we're like, okay, because the first attempt was a disaster. They were ready to kill each other, you know, and we were like, okay, this is crazy, and in some way there's a silver lining to this, as scary and as uncertain as it is. There's the silver lining where we've all been kicked off of life's treadmill, and we're forced to stop and slow down and appreciate, not that we didn't before, but just appreciate food on the grocery shelves, you know, on the grocery shelves of the stores, and just time to play a board game and talk to one another and be connected. And we can kind of come out of this on the other side. We can use this time to connect like that, and learn from it and grow from it and connect with each other as humans and realize how connected the world is. I mean, you know, borders really are the fictitious things. They don't care about politics, and they don't care about your feelings. This virus is indiscriminate, isn't it? You know, it's just any country in the world could become affected. So we're all connected as people, and it's, I think it's bringing people together and not driving people apart.
Yeah,
I think it is. I really do. I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's brought. There's an old country song that Will and Jennings had out called "Stop the World and Let Me Off." That's exactly what's happening. The world is stopped, and we are getting off, whether we want to or not. We have to sit back and just put things back to the way it used to be. And I think that's where the music industry is going to really thrive in this whole thing, because it's one of the real things we can grab a hold of. And
definitely. Definitely. Like, I don't think that things like this, like, I'm not the person that believes that things like this come from God necessarily, but I think that your perspective can really teach you what to do with it. You can, we had a today's Sunday as we talk, and we had a little, group chat, virtual thing with our small group from our church, and we were talking about it and sort of supporting one another. And your perspective in these things could be used to grow from and to connect and to find the silver lining and find the blessing in the darkness, find the light in the darkness of the situation. Really,
yeah, it's important. You have to find the positive thing to come out at the other end with. And I think the connection that everyone's making with one another, I know I've reached out to people I haven't talked to in a long time, and I go through my list and say, oh, I should really check in with this person. I should check in with this person. And you check in, and they get back to you, and they're so happy to hear from you. And it makes me think, well, why did I wait this long to reach out?
Yeah,
exactly.
And
exactly.
It really
definitely
feels good that way. And
yeah, just tonight I had a FaceTime call from an old friend of mine that we used to play in a band together, and we hadn't talked in forever. And it's hard because I'm like I said, I'm turning 40 next month, so I wasn't really here in the 60s for the JFK era or the Watergate era of Nixon or World War II or the Spanish flu or things like that, or the Great Depression. So I don't actually know. I have no sense of the level of intensity of those eras for parents or grandparents. But I know that, like, a lot of people would say, and you'd see people on television say, like, just before all of this started, and maybe even now, that there had never been. They don't remember a time where the dialect and where the volume and the noise of the sort of intensity of maybe hatred for other sides of politics and everything, just the noise of the world was so loud and so intense. And maybe we'll go right back to where we were, who knows, but I'm hoping that this time, as we're kind of forced to shut down, we'll just sort of force everybody to take a breath and work together and realize how fragile all of this is. I mean, it's all just fragile, and we're just getting humbled here by this thing, how fragile everything is, all of the little things we take for granted.
Yeah, I was talking to my family today, and we were saying we were working, doing just all these spring cleanup the last few days, all this stuff that we've been wanting to do, and we said normally probably at this time we would have just said to one another, let's just go out for something to eat. And we worked all day, we're tired, and no, we're just going to eat at home. And we talked about that. And so you get so used to that comfort of just going out and grabbing something, and that's pulled away from you to some extent. We're out in the country here, so it's not easy to order. You can't order Uber Eats here or anything, right? You just go to your freezer and you just start working through it and be creative. And it's just, there's a part of me that is really enjoying it. And there's a part of me that's terrified and scared and anxious, but the opposite side feels really, really great. And we were talking this morning too as well about our summer season at our theater, and I'm thinking, if we don't end up having it, I haven't had a summer off in 20 years, and that's working every single day of the summer. And there's part of me kind of going, I wonder what that feels like. Because I haven't had that for so long, and there's a part of me that's terrified of losing that because it's such a big thing. And then there's the opposite side that somewhat feels, geez, that's going to be pretty interesting. I mean, I can, just cut the grass whenever I want to. I can sleep in if I want to, or, just kind of enjoy the sunshine and have a barbecue when I want to. It certainly is the opposite end. It's the part that creeps up at night when you go to bed and start thinking about things. And it's like all of a sudden you realize wow, this really is terrifying on the other side of things. So.
Well, and it might not, that's the crazy thing, is it might not be our choice. I've got a charity event that I host in my hometown of Pembroke, and this would be our 7th annual coming up in June.
Yeah.
And like we said at the top of the call, a couple of weeks ago, we had a conference call talking about this, and at the time, I was feeling pretty good that we were far enough out. And now, as things continue to unfold, it's become even more uncertain. That our event is actually scheduled for June 16th and 17th.
Yeah.
We do a concert on a Tuesday night, concert fundraiser, and then we do a golf event the next day. And I mean, even though that's the middle of June, it's got me anxious and concerned for the event, that we might have to look at that the next time we have a conference call. But we've been, it's been a labor of love for the past, 6, and now this will be year 7. And just having special guests, artists, friends of mine from all over Canada, country music artists, and even a few sports celebrities have been out, and we've managed to raise over $500,000 for local charities, and that I think that some of them you can come to expect that we'll do this. So I'm definitely feeling that pressure that hopefully we can do something.
Jason, take us back a little bit, back to the early days. As I mentioned to you earlier, I'm quite familiar with the area you're from up there. I mean, how old were you when you first really got into this big time?
I think it got real for me. I mean, I started playing in a band with my dad, and my dad's a bass player. He's 65 this year, and he still plays like 3 gigs a month. He does like the 10 till 2 and carry out the PA system. Something he's yeah, and as
my type of guy.
Yeah, and he refuses to go to a smaller cabinet, so he likes to push air on stage. He's got a Harkey 410 cabinet that he drags in and out of the basement every gig.
Wow.
And so he's done that. I love that. I just love it. And he still does it, and because that's my early memories was my going down to the basement and opening up my dad's bass case maybe on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, and the smell that would come out of that bass case of like just nightlife, right? It was he didn't even smoke or drink, but it was the 80s, so it was just cigarette smoke and booze and nightlife, and it was like, wow, what is that? You wish you could bottle that up, and so that was it for me. I was bit by that bug early, and then I ended up having my dad. My dad played bass. I bought my brother a drum kit that he actually only just parted with. He sold to somebody this past year. Actually, he had it all this time. He had a newer, better one, but he had always kept that drum kit. And then a couple of other local musicians, and we played the little circuit around Pembroke until I graduated college, and I moved to the Kitchener-Waterloo era. And that's where Darren, we have a lot of friends in common. That's where I met, Rick Hutt and the Cedar Tree Studios crew, and Jason Barry and Shane Gousset and Stacy, and all of those wonderful people around that area that just became dear friends of mine. And my wife and I lived 5 years in K-Dub, and I played the bar circuit around Toronto, from Kitchener to Toronto, up as far as North Bay sometimes, and divey little places, but they paid at least a chunk of the bills. It was a guy who was good to me. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Joe Firth.
Oh yeah,
and the Promised Land. I don't know very well. Yeah,
I still have I've got it in my room. I've kept it. Joe Firth in the Promised Land. And he would call up with some shitty gig somewhere, and I'd be like, "Oh man, I don't know if I want to go back to the Queensway, Joe and Trent or something." He's like, "Well, $200 that you didn't have before."
That's true.
and so I would go and I'd do these gigs, and at one point there was a contest that came up, and it predated Nashville Star. It predated American Idol, if you can believe that. God, I'm old. I'm not even old, but God. But it was the first ever Project Discovery, and it was put on by the Canadian Country Music Association and CMT Canada, participating course stations. And it was Jamie Warren's wife, Beth, at the time. And they're always very sweet people to me. Jamie's a dear friend, been to my wedding, sang at my wedding, and was really the first person. My dad talked to him randomly when he came to Pembroke, and did a show in Pembroke. And that's really what started this whole thing for me. That was the first kind of famous person that I ever met. They invited me out to the show in Pembroke, and I got up on stage, and Jason Barry, I think, played drums, and Chappie played bass, and I played his guitar. Paul Chapman, for people that don't know, one of the best guitar players out there, Paul Chapman. And anyway, then when I had moved to Kitchener, Waterloo to be closer to those guys and that whole scene, this contest came up, and I went through all the preliminary rounds, and I made it out to Calgary. And I entered this contest, and I had made it out to Calgary, and I performed my songs in front of the judges, and I didn't win. I didn't even place second, but it was an experience. And that year was 9/11.
Wow!
Oh boy! So the very next day was 9/11. Aaron Pichette was the winner. And so it was bittersweet, I'm sure, for him, that you win this contest, and the next day is 9/11. So a year goes by, I go back to the bar circuits, and a year goes by, and this contest comes up again. And man, I got no money, and I got no reason not to do it again, other than it was kind of grueling and a big disappointment. But I did it, and because I knew of no other way to kind of get into the industry, so I did it. And then the following year, I actually won the thing, and I got to have a single produced by Tom McKillop, and that single was a song called "That's What I Do," and I owned my publishing on it. I wrote it myself, and I got my first SOCAN check. I think the first one was maybe $80, and then the second one was like $12,000, and it was the most money I'd ever saw in my life. From
great.
Anything, and that one did really well, and we ended up, that song I ended up funding an independent record. Jason Barry produced and did a couple of sides with Rick Hutt as well, and but I worked with Jason mainly on that record, and I ended up signing up a management deal with Randy Stark, and we were off to the races. I had a couple of singles that did top 20 from that album and CMT videos, and I basically used that thing that was my demo, or that was my record, that was my thing to take to Nashville and say, hey, this is where I'm at, and
yeah.
that's what we did. So in 2006, we packed up a 3-month-old baby girl and moved to Tennessee.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So what was that decision like, moving to Nashville? What made you make that leap, and what was that trip like going down there?
My wife cried from Kitchener to Detroit.
That's not bad.
Thank you. on and off, not the whole way. But no, she wanted to go too. It was just a big scary move.
Oh yeah.
We had a 3-month-old baby girl. We put everything into storage, and we had a year maternity leave. She had a good job. She was a teacher at the University of Waterloo, and in daycare, ECE teacher.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good pay and had good benefits and stuff. And so she was able to take a maternity leave, and we had like I don't know, if we had $2,500 in savings, that might have been it. Like just enough for a couple months rent. And there was a sweet lady, her name was Tammy Brown, and she rented what I thought was going to be like a studio apartment in her house or whatever, based on the emails. She was taking care of Jason McCoy's rental property, and I had met her on a trip going down, and she was working for Olay Music Publishing. Sweet lady. Reminded me so much of like living with Dolly Parton or something. She had that kind of a big bubbly personality, and she was an industry veteran too. She worked at Sony, and she worked directly with the Dixie Chicks and with Billy Ray Cyrus through that era.
Yeah.
And she had, little did I know when I got there, she basically had just converted the upstairs of her house into a master bedroom and a nursery made the other bedroom a nursery for our little girl. She just painted everything, bought a crib secondhand, and did it all up, and just welcomed us in like family.
Wow.
And she was an amazing lady. Sadly, about a year after living there, she started getting ill. She developed leukemia, and we lost her a couple of years later after we had moved out and bought our own house and everything. But always kept in touch, and that was a deep loss, because she was such an angel for us at a big pivotal moment in our lives.
Yeah,
moving there, and that she's was there when I signed my first publishing deal in Nashville, and sort of semi-record deal, and she saw a lot of the first. The first thing that I ever did was a song called "Rockin' My Boot" that was like the first song I wrote when I got here, I think, with Phil O'Donnell and Noah Gordon, and produced it up, and it sounded great, and it was my first number one in Canada, and performed it on the awards show. Like, this was all within less than a year. We moved in the fall of. Well, I guess it was a year then. It was less than a year. We moved in the fall of 2006, almost in November. And by September 2007, I was closing out the CCMA Awards show on CBC.
Wow.
Great. That's excellent. Boy, that's a rocket ship ride. That's good.
It was. And then we toured like crazy across Canada, played everywhere for the next 3 years on that first record. I have 5 top 10 singles from that record. And and then it's just been a roller coaster ride of a lot of hits and some misses, for the last 13 years.
That's great. I see you're doing some work with Julian Pecan. He's certainly a very well respected gentleman in the industry.
He sure is. He's been around a while, and he's he's managed to get us some great dates for the summer, including Boots and Hearts. This would be my 4th appearance back on that festival. It's a wonderful festival.
That's great.
They treat everybody so well there, and especially the Canadian artists. Can't say enough good things about them. Stan and Eva and Brooke, actually Stan's daughter and Eva's daughter Brooke, they run a great festival and nominated for an ACM too this year.
That's excellent. Very, very good.
Festival of the year. Yeah. And
good stuff.
Some other dates too would be in Manitoulin Country Fest this year.
Great.
Always nice to get up there too. That's a beautiful part of the country in the summertime.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Listen, you're lucky you're not doing the fair up there. God, years ago we did that fair. You have to do 2 outdoor shows, and then you have to come back and do the dance at night inside the arena. So you'd end up doing a 4-hour dance and a 3-hour afternoon show. So it was busy.
Crazy.
Yeah, it sure was.
So what are you doing on a regular basis in Nashville? If you kind of tune in on the songwriting and the things as well, and what's your life like in Nashville nowadays?
Well, so for the past 6 years, I've been writing for Curb Word Music Publishing, and like 4 or 5 days a week, writing, immersing myself in the writing community. And and I've had some success with that too. I love creating. I love something to do every day. I really saw, just being a father, a husband, and a father to 4 kids. I felt like it sort of gave me a really good anchor for me to be a husband and a father and be home and not on the road so much. And, trying to go after, some songwriting heroes of mine, even friends of mine, like Derek Rattan, who's just built a beautiful cabin in the woods, on like some 50 acres in Gallatin, just a dream, after a 20-year career of songwriting where is something you can really hang your hat on and have a just do the thing, and he's written songs for Blake Shelton, or that Blake Shelton has recorded, and Jason Aldean and everything else. And so I've had recently cuts and singles with our Canadian gal Madeline Merlo has recorded several of my songs. 2 of them have been singles, Neon Love and Over and Over. Tim Hicks recorded a thing we wrote together, the band, Petric had a single out that we wrote together last year. And on the state side, there's an American group, Parmalee, cut one of my songs a couple of years ago. And most recently, Chris Jansen just happened to have the record in my hand here.
I love it.
He cut one of my songs that I wrote with a couple of pals. And, there's a lot of buzz about it. And, we're just fingers crossed it becomes a single in the U.S. And that would be a game changer on the songwriting side of things.
Here's a question that probably comes up every once in a while. How do you feel about your move to Nashville? Did you feel that, I know a lot of Canadian artists feel that they have to get to Nashville to be successful, or that's part of the journey. How do you feel about that nowadays? Do you feel you still have to get to Nashville, or can you still just stay based in Canada and be successful?
I think at the time that I did it, I think it was necessary.
Yeah.
I think it was necessary when I did it. And I always really wanted to do it too. Like from a really young age, reading the album liner notes, and seeing recorded at Soundstage or recorded at Ocean Way, Nashville, Tennessee, or the Castle or wherever. Like I just knew that I wanted to be here and working in this community and hell, at one point I wanted to be Brad Paisley. I want to be on the Opry and the ACMs and the whole deal, Yeah. So I just knew I always wanted to be here doing it. And what I didn't know, because you're probably a semi-narcissistic 25-year-old, just thinking about yourself and your own ambitions, is that when you move here with a 3-month-old baby girl and you stay for 13 years, well, then it becomes her home. Yeah. And this is her, like Canada's not her home. Pembroke, Ontario, where I'm from, will always be my home, or a big part of it. But this is her home, and as well as our other 3 kids. I mean, this is all they know. 2 of them are American, full on. Yeah. We don't even have Canadian citizenships for them yet. They're full on American, and their friends have accents, and their teachers have Southern accents. They don't, not extreme, anyways, yet. But it's home. And then my wife has an amazing community of friends that we've made that we've known over a decade, and I've got friends that we've known for that long, and it feels like home, right? You plant roots somewhere. And so even if it wasn't music, we've fallen in love with the area of Hendersonville, Tennessee, and Tennessee itself, and the city of Nashville, and the community of friends and people we hang with here. And we visit, I think I probably always romanticized moving back to my hometown and building my dream house on the river, on the Ottawa River or something like that. But my wife would send me back by myself at this point. I think to answer your question, Darren, I think nowadays too, with like recording software has gotten so good that the studios, sadly, for these amazing studios, they've become less important than they were 10, 13 years ago. People are able to get sounds and make these amazing records anywhere. They can make them in their apartment or something,
Yeah, because it's funny, because I've had this conversation before. You think back in the 90s, maybe, let's say back in that era, you'd be listening to the radio, and you could definitely hear when a Canadian artist came on the radio. If you didn't know who it was, there was a particular sound to it that wasn't like Nashville. And if you wanted that sound, you had to go to Nashville to get it done. And I don't know what that was. There's definitely as good of players up here, and always has been. But it was just not the same. For some reason, you could just tell the difference. At least I could. You could just, that's a Canadian production. You just could hear it. Yeah. But now you turn on the radio, you don't hear that difference anymore. It's right on par. Yeah.
Well, and there's so many reasons for that. You're right. There are tremendous players. My first record was recorded in Toronto, and I had amazing Canadian players. They're all Canadian players on it, and it sounded. They did a really, really great job. I mean, you were the best players that we had, and many of them had played sessions in Nashville too, and everything else. But those records out of Nashville with the names that I had read my whole life, like Rob Hajakis on fiddle, or Brent Mason, or Jeff King, or Eddie Bears on drums, and some of these, I mean, those were the names that I read on the credits of Brooks and Dunn, or Garth Brooks, or Alan Jackson, or whatever. And to get to Nashville and work with those guys, I mean, heck, I had a Brent Mason VHS instructional guitar video, the one with the Western Swing. And then here I am, years later in the studio, asking him to play this intro on my song that I wrote, and he's looking to me to be like, well, more like this and more like this. And I'm like, heck, you're Brent Mason. I don't want to like tell you anything. And he's asking me if it's okay. Like, it was so surreal. And Rob Hajakis, he's the guy that played the fiddle part on Much Too Young to Feel This Damn Old. And he's like, are you happy with the parts I played? Is it cool? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So, but the crazy thing for me now, in the time that we're in with the digital age of music, and more samples, fake drums, everything being made basically on a computer, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I think maybe not all of my records represent this, because I'm also trying to be competitive on mainstream radio and everything too. But I fight it, because I actually am a purist at heart. I moved to this town to be around the best musicians I can be around, and the best songwriters. And I think that there's a real spiritual element that comes from everybody who's poured their life's work into being good at this one thing, a steel guitar player. If it's Mike Johnson or Paul Franklin, I mean, they've perfected this as a craft. Everybody has. Yeah. And so I don't want to use computer things. I want humans on my records.
Boy, that's good to hear. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned about reading the liner notes, and obviously I did the same thing, and you'd study and you get to know these people, and you see them, they played on this album, they played on this album. But now you're just live streaming, or you don't get albums, and you're not looking at the back, and you're not looking at the credits as much anymore. And I wonder about younger kids, if they're seeking out who's playing on these projects, or else they just listen to them.
Yeah.
And
it's taken a long time. It's drug its feet a bit, but it's catching up. I'm seeing more and more now. I'm seeing it come out on Spotify. I'm seeing the streaming platforms add that stuff in, and it's really cool. And I think you're going to see a lot more of it, because the musicians are calling for it. Especially like for important things like neighboring rights and stuff, and credits, they're all calling for it. So it's happening. And I think, like I have a new EP that'll be coming out in May, and we still had, people play on it. And it was great. I worked with Danik DePel, great musician and producer from the band Emerson Drive. Yep. And we had Mike Johnson into the studio to play on it. And he played steel on it. It was great to see him in person.
Did you put your hands through his hair to see if it was real?
It's pretty perfect, isn't it? Pretty perfect. So, I love that human connection with everybody. And then Danik and I passed the electric guitar back and forth. I played more guitar parts and solos on this maybe than I ever have, and which was really cool and fun for me. And Danik helped make sure that I got all the good tones and played my best, and that was a lot of fun. And there's some elements of we have some loops, and we have some things like that too on this thing. Again, trying to be current and trying to sound fresh and inventive for me as well. But man, I tell you what, I see Darren. I see pictures and clips sometimes from your theater and of the old time country stuff and the traditional stuff, and one of these days I'm going to do either a traditional country EP or a roots country record or something like that, because honestly, that's the record I've probably always just wanted to be making Vince Gill Pocket Full of Gold 1989 my whole life, really.
Yeah.
That was a good album.
Yeah. Well, it's part of your youth, right? I think it's that time period that you grew up through. You grew up through all that great music, and everyone was playing on everyone's album, and that's the music you go back to, right? And it stays with you forever, and it's important. But it's you have to keep with the times. You have to throw loops in, and it's weird when you say, "Oh, I've actually had people play on my album," and the average person wouldn't understand what that means. And what do you mean there was nobody playing on your album? It happens nowadays where it's just one guy who hits the keyboard and creates a whole sound, and that's your album. And
well, I think that the Grammy album of the year, the Billie Eilish record, I believe that it was just her and her brother did it in their house, like the whole thing.
Yeah,
like he just in the bedroom, and she just has this amazing voice and this amazing way to paint pictures and tell stories that relates to a generation, and he's just clearly a genius with logic, and there you have it. I mean, it's like a record defining or a generation defining record at the Grammys. But you know what though, there's so many different things going on all at once, and I really think there's something for everybody, because then you have this whole Chris Stapleton movement over here that I love so much, and Brothers Osborne, and even Dierks' record. He went back to doing what I love him doing so much more earthy country, and I can see myself doing a lot more of that in the future too, because ultimately you can't be what you don't love either. And I'm an old soul. I grew up on the Eagles and Alabama and those Vince Gill records and all that stuff too. And yes, I still want to be on, country radio and be able to do the thing, but I'm definitely at some point, if it continues to go a certain way, at some point I'll probably tap out and just start doing, what my heart tells me I need to be doing.
I think it's all going to come around. I think the old stuff is going to become new again. I like what's happening now, and it's neat. It's different. Does it feel a little repetitious? I think so, but that's just my opinion.
Oh, it's already happening. There's there's still great stuff out there too. Like there's still this is not to take away. There's some stuff that is going on that I just don't identify with, maybe melodically and stuff, because I can tell like those melodies are coming from different places. Or some of the production is just coming from a place that I just don't come from. But then there's other stuff that I completely identify with and completely love, and some stuff that Keith Urban's done very recently, or Maren Morris, or Dierks, or Brothers Osborne, and heck, even some of the stuff that John Mayer does now. I'm like, I can hear where that stuff comes from. Yeah. It's not like, it's not foreign. I like those melodies. Vince was doing that, and Rodney Crowell, and those guys were doing that years ago. Like, they're just pulling. So things do cycle back around.
You mentioned Mike Johnson. Well, he's been around forever and ever and ever. Like 30 years ago, him and his brother were with Bill Anderson. So it's good to see him kind of still going with everything, not just traditional stuff, but you watch him on that RFD TV playing with Bill Anderson and those guys, and you see him on these sessions, and the next thing you know, it's with Reba, and he's one of the best. So if you do one of those traditional albums, he's your man.
Yeah, and he's played on all of my records.
That's great.
It just takes a lifetime to, like, an instrument like steel guitar. I mean, really, you don't hardly ever see like a 20-year-old, virtuoso that plays, with the detail and the intonation and the patience that, a guy like Mike has. I mean, he's been now him and Paul Franklin, and then I would say Ed Ringwald out of Kitchener-Waterloo. I'd say Doug Johnson out of the Brantford area. Those guys are in the same league. Just in Canada, and incredibly proficient at that craft. And it's taken a long time. And those guys have all also been good for a lot of years. I mean, it does take a long time. A lot of them are at like the top of the game now in their 50s.
That's good.
50s. You're being kind.
I like that.
They might be a little. They might be a little older.
To the top of the game. That's good.
Yeah.
It is one of those instruments, though, that you take steel. It's not an instrument you can just put aside for a while and pick up again and keep going. It's one of those instruments that you have to keep playing. And those guys, they all play all the time. I mean, they just keep playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. And that's why you get better and better and better and better. It's just, they've always been great, but there's just subtle differences to when they get older. And I think it's for all of us. So I think you just mature, and you think about things differently. And
well, you gotta play. And you know what? I actually picked up for the first time in 13 years of living in Nashville. This year was the first year I actually picked up a lower Broadway gig.
Really?
Just as ask you about that.
Yeah, I never had done it before. I was so just focused on the songwriting thing and and not being out at night, coming home and being dad, but I had never, when I first moved to Nashville, the very, very first attempt, I tried to do it and I didn't make any money at it. Like, it was just, I didn't see how I could survive doing that. So, but now it wasn't from a place of like wanting to, like, worrying about how much money's in the tip jar down there at the end of the night. Although it is nice if you kind of come out of there with a couple $100, that's good too. But it was just for what we're talking about. Like, I was realizing that I was really missing playing in a band, and not necessarily just playing my music, but just playing whatever. Yeah. Like just that sort of heads up, fly by the seat of your pants, thing that happens when somebody's requesting a song and you just got to come up with a solo or learn the intro part on the fly or whatever. Just keeps you sharp as a musician. And I want to do it more, a lot more, because even Vince Gill plays every Monday night at 3rd and Lindsley with the Time Jumpers.
Yeah.
He's got like 22 Grammys, but he plays to stay sharp.
That's one of the things that's been missing in this business for a long time, that club scene. Either it disappeared or there was the lack of not wanting to do it. And I couldn't agree with you more. When you see these artists that don't have that experience or stay sharp, that's where they pick it all up. And I think it's great. And I love exactly what you're saying.
I think in the club scene in Ontario and stuff, back there, maybe it's always been this way. I'll stand up on my soapbox here for just a second and offer my 2 cents. And anytime I would ever go into any place like that, if we had a night off, I'd walk into a place, there'd be some band playing, they'd be playing Fishing in the Dark or or some songs like or Brown Eyed Girl or whatever, and those are both great songs, don't get me wrong, but it was like I read a fresh set list of songs and stuff, and I think that sometimes I saw different bands phoning it in and stuff too. Yeah. I saw a lot of good players, but I think that more and more people have to find their way of drawing people in with their proficiency, with their passion for it. Like, do you really want to be up there? Is that the song you really want to play, Fishing in the Dark? Is that your whole passion? I would be bored to tears back in those days when I played those songs so many times. I wanted to be playing something new, something exciting, and something fresh, and something that fired me up. And probably that's why I didn't do it for years. I was not in a hurry to go play the same damn songs down on Lower Broadway that I had just been playing in Canada for 5 years.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, though, you had that in your background and you knew that's what you didn't want. And I think it was probably the best thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and so I'm seeing bands. I'll send a shout out to my friends like the Western Swing Authority. Yeah. All really good friends of mine. There's a perfect example of great musicians, playing music that they love and finding a way to do it on their terms and creating a following, bringing people in. Because people love to hear good music. People love that.
Yeah, and audiences aren't as dumb as you sometimes think they are. In most cases, they're pretty sharp. They know when someone's really good, and they know when the singer's great, and they know when the guitar player is great or the drummer is really good, and they know when it's great entertainment. They get that, right? And if you're doing something you love and you stick to it and work hard at it, you'll find your audience always, and they'll find you.
Yeah.
it's really, really important to do that and stick it through and see it through. And there are lots of groups, including Western Swing Authority, which are doing really great. And they're doing Western swing music that nobody knows much about here in this area, right? Yeah. And they're teaching them about it, and people are becoming fans from music they didn't really even know they liked. But I imagine in Nashville, when you're playing on Broadway, it's a different vibe than you get up here for sure. You
never know what you're going to get a request for. Anything from Glenn Campbell to Tanya Tucker to the Highwaymen, right up to maybe a Thomas Rhett song or something, and I'll have to pull the intro riff up on my iPhone or whatever and do it. But it's been fun. I've just been doing it only Monday nights at a place called Rippy's 6 to 10 with this young lady, Danielle Todd, that just asked me one day. She just needed a guitar player, and I did it, and I just had such a blast that I kept doing it. And now, so I've kind of been sad during this whole shutdown that I haven't been playing with them. I've been looking forward to those Monday nights as a place to go and just knock around and make some noise, turn my amp up a little bit and just play like the old days. And man, my playing, it's just all gotten sharper. It's just, and gotten better, because when I hit the big stages in the summer, like Boots and Hearts and those things, I want to be great. I want to be my best version of myself. I don't want to be rusty or anything like that when I get there.
And you have less to think about too. You're not worrying about being that front guy that's got to be constantly engaged in the audience and thinking about what am I going to say when this song's done and how we're going to get into this section of the show and what's happening. What's the drummer doing or what, whatever you're thinking about. You can just get up there and play. And that, if you're playing guitar and you're the front guy, playing guitar is probably one of the last things you're thinking about.
Oh yeah. It's definitely, it's definitely been a challenge because my heroes have been guitar player artists. My heroes were always the Vince Gills, Steve Warners, and then later I found heroes in Keith Urban and Brad Paisley, guys that were doing it on the super contemporary level. And Brad they're all freaks. I mean, they're all incredibly talented. Paisley is just like a maniac, but Keith certainly made it cool but I was always amazed. I mean, I watched Keith Urban and Luke Bryan a couple of summers ago, and Luke does his thing. He doesn't like play much, although he can. He's a pretty good acoustic player, but he just sings. And Keith did his show. I thought his show was so electric and so amazing. And I don't even think that the fans even realized half of what he was doing on guitar while he was playing. Yeah. It was like. And they were equally entertained by Luke Bryan, who didn't play at all. I mean, they maybe even more so. I don't know. Like it was surreal. I was like blown away by Keith. Was even better than I remembered him from years and years ago when I saw him in a small club. But for me, it was when I hear guys like Vince Gill talk about being just as comfortable in the side guide chair. I actually started before I became an artist for myself. I played backup guitar for Jamie Warren, and I even played one year on the awards show with Paul Brandt, and played for other bands and stuff around the area, just playing side guy. And I also enjoy that in the way that, for a hockey reference, in the way that you just like to lace up the skates and play pickup hockey with the fellas every now and then. Yeah, exactly. And just play a role, just be on defense or something, and just, you don't have to be the star of the show. You're just part of the team. Yeah. That's the closest reference I guess I can come up with.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Looking kind of back when you're starting out and thinking about being a musician, and you mentioned Garth Brooks earlier, who else do you think was an influence in what you're doing nowadays as far as singing and playing, and any other influences that you had when you were growing up?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to quickly rhyme off some names, it was, probably I listened to the Eagles, and I listened to a lot of Bryan Adams, those melodies, all of that. And then I seem to I still listen to all those guys, and I still listen to Vince Gill. I identified a lot with Steve Warner, the tone of his voice.
Yeah.
I felt like I could identify with. I knew I wasn't a baritone. I knew I didn't have a low voice.
Yeah.
So I identified to those guys that were more in that higher register, like Steve, and then Brian White came along and he did some incredible records and then it sort of evolved from there. Like I think I was still living in Kitchener-Waterloo in 2001 when Keith Urban exploded with "Love Somebody Like You." I was still playing in clubs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the most current version of like what I would aspire to be, because he had all the same influences that I did, even though he was older than me. It was Glenn Campbell and for him, and guys like that, and so then I gravitated towards that kind of a sound a little bit, but not totally, because I didn't want to completely copy him, although I probably did a few times. I think we all did. I don't think that there's been anybody since maybe Waylon Jennings or that came along and changed country music as much as Keith Urban did. Like that whole stomping banjo groove that's on everything, and the 4 on the floor loud kick drum. I mean, I credit Keith Urban with all of that. I really do. And so cool, and then and then I'm inspired. Even I've always been a Kenny Chesney fan, just from the songs that he chose. Yeah. Kenny's never cut a bad song. They've always been the best songs he could find in Nashville. And so nowadays, I'm still inspired by all these people. I'm inspired by the heroes still on the radio, and a lot of the records being made now. I think on both sides of the border in Nashville and in Canada, there's never been a more exciting time. The amount of quality musicianship and writing and production is just fantastic. It's just so good. Everywhere I look, everything sounds amazing, and the songs and the singing and the playing, it's all really, really great. It's very easy to stay inspired.
It's a bit of a drag now because everything sounds so good now, and everyone's just walking around with crappy earbuds in, listening to music.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's like sometimes I get so angry. It's like, oh man, if you just when we grew up, you used to have the great speakers in your living room, and you took pride. You got that CD or the record you wanted, and it sounded so good. And now you put in earbuds, and it's just, and you'd accept it. It's great, and I mean it still works either way. But it's funny how now that everything sounds so good, but everyone's listening to it through crappy headphones.
Yeah, that's what I've heard that too. That's crazy, but not me. I've got a set of Ultimate ears, but I also hear that there's Plunge Audio in Canada. I got to talk to those guys because I heard that they're pretty amazing. Yeah. I fly around on flights with my Ultimate ears right now, but all my friends are going to these Plunge, so I might have to check that out. But and then I've got pretty decent stereo in my truck, and I can't listen to good music on shitty headphones.
It's funny.
Amen.
I just bought a different vehicle, and I was at the car dealership, and the guy's trying to tell me everything about the car and what type of engine it has and all this stuff. And I was like,
well, how's the stereo?
Yeah,
how's the stereo?
First thing I said, I need to listen to the stereo, and I want to see how my phone connects to it. And he just looked at me. He was shocked. I said,
well, right. Well, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I need to know whether I can use Waze on it. And I need to know whether the stereo sounds any good.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I didn't care. I took it for maybe a 3-minute drive, and it's like, drive's fine. And I came back, and I sat in the lot for about an hour and just played with all electronics on it to make sure that everything worked the way I'd want it to work.
Yeah, there's a lot. Hey, I got the battery warning on my phone. I got the 20% warning. I'm not sure how long you guys still plan to go or whatever, but I could somehow plug it in or something. But you let me know.
No, or we can wrap it up.
We're good.
One thing I always like to ask everybody on every podcast, if they had a chance to play one particular place that they've never played before, do you have that dream location, dream venue, dream city that you've never played but you've always wanted to? What would that be for you?
One of the big unchecked boxes for me is the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
I've seen some other artists, peers of mine, do it, and I burn with envy. No, but no, I grew up watching that show, and you gotta earn your way to that stage. No doubt about it. And sometimes it's, I've had a very successful career in Canada as a Canadian artist, and some crossover stuff, in the States on satellite radio and stuff. But I would love to. I'd love to play a song on that sacred stage.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
You will.
It will happen.
Your lips to God's ears, or Hank's.
Exactly.
Brian, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
No, I had a great time, and Jason, thanks a lot, especially sharing some of those great stories. I was really intrigued about the Broadway stories. I was going to ask if you had a chance to be down there. I was there not too long ago, and it certainly has changed over the years. A whole different ball of wax now.
Yeah,
doesn't matter what day of the week, it's hopping.
And for the better on a lot of levels. Of levels, people are getting used to paying to tipping $20 a song. It's becoming more of a norm, and that's helped the income of people. I mean, because what the hell? You're in Nashville, you're drinking, you're probably hammered. Tip, you don't have to do a bunch of somebody $20 to hear your song.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like 2 drinks, and then also safety. Metro is doing a better job, and City Council here. There's a whole sort of community of people that play, artists and musicians that have been playing down there have really rallied the City Council and the Mayor's office and Metro Police to help protect them more, which is long overdue and needs to happen. People need to be safe because, let's face it, I mean, this is Music City, and it just passed Vegas for the Bachelor and Bachelorette capital of the world.
I've seen that. That's great.
And it's big business, and it's not Nashville without the music, and there's no music without the musicians. Yeah. So they got to keep them safe, especially all those fantastic young lady singers that sing down there. And they need to get back to their vehicles and everything else, and they're doing a much better job as far as I can tell.
That's great. Good stuff. Very, very good.
Well, really appreciate you spending your time, and hope you stay safe and healthy down in Nashville, and enjoy your time with your family. We'll hope to reconnect again, and if either one of us are down in Nashville, we'll make sure we reach out, and it'd be great to grab a drink. This is
great. Please do. You guys have my number. Brian, Darren, I've enjoyed it. Let's do it again sometime.
Sounds awesome. Thanks again.
Jason.
We'll talk to you soon,
buddy. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.